Welcome, everyone, to Beyond Sunday. I'm Pastor Aaron Maroney. I'm so glad you chose to join us today. We are joined with a man named Spencer, who was an atheist, who is now a Christian, and the acts of God that led him to the place he's at today. I know you will be blessed by this testimony interview. Well, thank you so much, Spencer, for coming in today. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
I truly believe that your story is going to bless a lot of listeners. And you wrote in to share just about your family, about your mom, and about your own faith journey. Would love to just give you the space and time to start
Yeah.
sharing your story.
Yeah. So it kind of starts out with that when I was growing up, I grew up in a very Christian household. I was baptized, I went through confirmation, but honestly, I never really felt that pull to Jesus or God or to any religion for that fact. I kind of was just going through the motions. My mom wanted me to become, a good Christian, but I just could never get there. The idea of God and Jesus Christ miracles was just too unfathomable for me to really get behind, understand, or support. So I never did. I never considered myself a skeptic by any means. I was
Sure.
a full blown atheist. You
Mm.
could not convince me that God was real. I took it so far that as an immature teenager, I literally would scoff at people that would say, like, oh, God did XYZ in my life, or if something happened on the news and they said, thank God, for XYZ, I'd say, you're being ridiculous. Like, how could you possibly believe in this?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I got a little bit older, a little bit more mature,
Yeah.
when I, took a step back and said, there are millions and millions and millions of people around the world that believe this and are on the opposite end of the spectrum as me, where they can't be unconvinced of God.
Sure. Yeah.
Why is that? They can't be all ridiculous either. So let
Yeah.
me take that
Some of
step
us might
back.
be, but
Yes.
not all.
So let me figure it out kind of on my own as a more mature adult and can really look at it from my own lens. And so for me, I thought, how can I do this? I can start reading the Bible, which I started doing, some religious texts, which I started doing.
Yeah.
I started reading actually a book called Letters from a Skeptic from the
Mm.
author that I believe went to Bethel here locally. That really kind of changed my view a bit. But the most important part of what I started doing was praying every day. And at the
Wow.
beginning, as someone who is atheist and I'm
Yeah.
deciding, what, I'm going to start praying, I
Yeah.
felt so silly sitting there before my meal or just when I woke up in
Wow.
the morning or at the end of the day or when I was going for a job interview or anything like that. And
Hmm.
I was praying, I felt super silly because I was talking to myself essentially. I didn't think anyone was listening,
Yeah.
but I really just wanted to get that understanding of like, this is what Christians do. This is
Yep.
what I was taught to do when I was growing up. Let me start doing it and see what happens.
Mm.
And it really wasn't for me to become a Christian. That wasn't my goal. My goal was really just to understand where people were coming from
How
and kind of understand that
interesting.
side of it. And so I did that for some time, almost, I would say almost a year before my mom gave me a call
Mm.
and she told me that she had cancer.
Mm.
I can't remember if it was stage 3 or stage 4 at the time, but we knew it was bad. It was in her mouth, her throat, her lungs. It was in her nearby lymph nodes.
Mm.
We knew that she didn't have long. And this was during COVID. So like I couldn't go to any of the doctor's
Oh
appointments.
my
I
God.
couldn't go to her chemotherapy. I couldn't go to anything when she was in the hospital and struggling to breathe. I couldn't go. And for me, I think a lot of people, atheists or not, are, you get that call of a family member having cancer, or you get the call that, maybe you have cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, why God us? Why are you doing this? And
Yes.
you've done all these miracles before. Do the miracle now. Heal
Yeah.
my mom. What are you doing? Like, why are we doing this? She was a devout Christian growing up
Mm.
and has done everything, right. And here she is. She was 60, having cancer
Mm.
and not having long. I was actually going to get married that same year,
Mm.
and I was her first child to get married. And so
Yeah.
to make matters worse, I'm like, you're not going to allow my mom
Oh.
to live long enough to have a first dance with me and to
Mm-hmm.
see her child get married, to have
Mm-hmm.
a new daughter-in-law. And so I didn't turn away from it. I'd say at that point too, I kind of became more agnostic and kind of
Okay.
skeptical, but like still, I'm just understanding. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be a
Well,
Christian.
and you're upset at someone. So
Right.
all of a sudden you move from there's no God to I'm actually upset
Yeah,
at someone or something. So it kind of moved the needle
that's true.
there.
Yeah. And it had moved the needle, and where I still decided, at that point, I'm still gonna keep this up. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
gonna pray.
Okay.
At the end of the day, my mom is very Christian, and maybe if I keep praying, maybe
Mm.
a miracle will happen. I don't
Mm.
know. So I kept praying, and she stayed alive for close to a year, I'd say. But
Okay.
it was at the point where chemo wasn't working, nothing was working, and it was time to let go, and time to say goodbye to my mom. And so my brothers and I went to the hospital, and this is where the act of God
Yeah.
story really begins for me. Well, maybe not begins, but the
Continues.
moment.
Yes. Yeah.
We get in there, and it's the first time I've seen my mom in a while because she is heavily sedated. She's intubated. She's asleep. She doesn't look the same at all. Chemo had taken its toll. She was very skinny. And she was just laying there, eyes closed, being kept alive by machines. And the doctor told us, boys, my brothers and I were there, boys, she won't wake up. She's not going to move. She will probably, though, hear your voice.
Okay.
She's heavily medicated, so she won't hear everything. She will probably, not understand necessarily, but she's going to hear you. She's going to know her sons are here, so it's good to talk to her. And so we did. Yeah. We talked to her. We cried together. We, held her hand. We, did everything that, you do at someone's bedside when you're letting go. We did that in the morning, through the afternoon. And when we finally got the strength to say, okay, it's time, Mom, to pull the plug, I pulled out Bible verses that one of her friends actually said, hey, bring these, read them. At the time, I didn't know necessarily any Bible verses that I could read. But, it was a list of like 10, maybe a dozen Bible verses. And I started reading them one by one by one. And I get like 5 or 6 through. And I end up on one from Romans, which is a very famous verse. It's the suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character. Character produces hope. And at that moment when I said hope, I looked up at my mom and her eyes were wide open, looking back at me. And she started to cry. And, I knew that... my mom was looking up at me, and the shock that overcame me. And we sat there basically staring eye to eye together that we really didn't think was going to happen. The doctor told us this won't happen. And it did. And it did after I read those Bible verses. As an atheist and as someone at that very moment when I was agnostic, I would chalk it up to coincidence that she woke up, but we were talking all day long. If she had that adrenaline spike where she wanted to wake up, she would have done it earlier. It was at that moment where we decided, hey, this is it. We have the strength now to say goodbye. I'm reading these Bible verses, and she shot open and started communicating with us. Actually, we developed. She not only woke up and was crying, and knew that this is the moment. I feel like she knew that it was the moment. Yep. We said, blink once for yes, blink twice for no.
Totally.
And she started doing that. And so like she was there. She was there for us. And it was a very powerful moment. And she had the strength and stayed alive, so to speak, long enough for all my brothers and I to ask our questions to her and get things answered. So I think, what a gift from God to be able to provide that for her, to be able to look eye to eye with their sons again, but us too, be able to see our mom, one last time, and to give us that moment of kind of peace to say like, she's okay, she's ready to go. It was super sad. I hadn't stopped crying, and I still, tear up at the thought of it, but it was a powerful moment for us. And it was one that if I hadn't been going down that journey, I would have chalked it up to coincidence, and I would have just kind of passed it aside as an adrenaline spike for my mom to be able to wake up. But it was really in that moment that I became a full-blown believer, and I'm so thankful that, I had been going down that path and getting to that point.
Well, and you probably wouldn't have even read those verses. It's
like
you're like super Christian mom, and her super Christian friend like sends these super Christian verses. Like you are, and maybe a brother would have, maybe not. But that the Holy Spirit is who puts like faith and openness into our own hearts. So he was calling out to you for probably quite longer than you realized. Through probably the many prayers that your mom prayed for you for your whole life, to get you to a place of, I believe in something, might even be God. Let me read this word that might even be his. And for him to, especially on that word, hope for you and your mom, for her to wake up, that this is the earth's greatest suffering is death, the experience of death, the fear of death, the like decaying of our bodies. But through that suffering, producing character in your mom, but he's also producing that in you. And then finally, like he's produced hope in you. And for your mom to be able to see that, oh my gosh. I can't imagine the joy that your mom had. Be like, oh my gosh, my sons, who she prayed for so long. That's amazing. And so then you had to say goodbye though.
Yes.
And that is so hard.
Yep, and it was a tough moment to be able to pull the plug. I don't wish it on my worst enemy to be able to do that to
Hmm.
not only anyone but your mother.
Yeah.
It was a big moment,
Mm.
but it was one that after she woke up, we felt comfortable that she had that moment and she
Yes.
was ready. She a
Yeah.
lot again was being kept alive by machines for months.
Yeah.
That's not the way that she wanted to live. She
Mm.
told us that many times,
Yeah.
and so we were comfortable with that.
Yeah. Which is good. And then she got to go home to Jesus,
Yeah.
which then now you're like, oh my gosh, I have this hope that makes me feel more alive, that makes me feel like my mom is going to be more alive than she's ever been. And so that piece of that, not only kind of, it wasn't really a decision that you guys made. You got to help her,
Yeah.
go home.
Absolutely.
And so, but you had mentioned that this process of being an atheist, being so far as to scoff, makes me think of Paul, who we're reading about in Acts
Yes.
right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like scoff. I'm sure you. Well, I'm not sure. I guess I should ask. Were you hunting down Christians?
No,
Okay, phew.
not hunting down.
Okay,
No, no,
phew.
no.
But similar to that type of idea of like, how could people have this faith to now having it? I'm sure it gives you a unique perspective on
Yeah.
people who are atheists. Is there maybe two questions here? Like, how could Christians better understand people who don't believe, don't imagine they could believe, don't really understand why we believe?
Yep.
And then secondly, like, if you had something to say to people
Yeah. Yeah.
who are
Yep.
still considering themselves atheist or maybe even agnostic.
Yeah, I think my message to Christians, and it's something that I take in now as I'm trying to
Yeah.
connect with more atheists and show them that
Yeah.
there is a way to
Mm.
believing and to learning and understanding
Yeah.
this thing called God and Jesus
Yes.
Christ. It's to be patient. It's really up
Mm.
to them to make that decision to get there. My mom, drilled in our heads from a young age about God and about Jesus. She never talked bad about them. It wasn't fear of God. It was, hey,
Yeah.
he is a loving, he's trying to have a relationship with you. There's this great thing called heaven. You're going to want to go.
Yeah.
And it sounds great on paper, but it's just, as an individual, I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
get there. And a lot of atheists couldn't get there.
Yeah.
And my message to Christians is be patient, show them
Good.
the good side and to understand that, as an atheist, the reason and the biggest reason why I wasn't believing is because the idea of God, and I said this earlier, was unfathomable to me.
Yeah.
But I sit here as a Christian.
Yeah.
God is pretty unfathomable. Jesus Christ's miracles
You're
are
right.
pretty unfathomable. Both
Yes.
things can be true. They
Yeah.
can be real and true
Mm.
and still be unfathomable. There's unfathomable things happening today in this world. That is crazy to me. That's something I wouldn't understand if I didn't see it with my own
Yeah.
eyes. Like
So
astronauts
true.
just went around the moon and landed safely in the ocean.
Yeah.
That is unfathomable.
Yeah.
And then
But it
two,
happened.
yeah, right.
Like, oh.
And something actually in Letters from a Skeptic, the book I read, that really opened my eyes was the idea of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
If we didn't have fossils, you're going to believe that creatures as tall as skyscrapers roam this earth?
Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
that's unfathomable too, but
Yeah.
because there's fossils, you believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of showed me the way of being agnostic and kind of learning that there might be something there. Let me dive in. And so my message to atheists is really you got to dive in personally and just
Yeah.
have that moment of prayer. Try it
Mhm.
out for a month, try it out
Yeah.
for a weekend,
Yeah.
and just see what happens. At the end of the day, if you don't get to that point,
Mhm.
you had, a little self meditation, which is great for
Yeah.
your mental health
That
as
is also very true. Yes.
and something for me too that really developed as I started attending Hosanna and learning from Ryan, Jen, and all the others is God. We all have a house that we live in personally. It's your house. Who comes in, who leaves is up to you at the end of the day. God is at the door. He's knocking. He wants to come in. It is up to you to find the strength to get up, to go unlock the door and welcome him in. He can bash open the door and say, I'm real, have a relationship with me, but that's not something we would have
Yeah.
with another human. That would be weird.
Yes.
And it'd be super weird if God did it as well. And so it's something that as an atheist, I was hoping God would just bash on the door and say,
Wow.
hey, I'm real.
So true.
But that's not how he wants to do it. That's not how you should do it. You really just have to get up, make the concerted effort to unlock the door,
Yes.
let him in, and have that relationship with him. And that's something that I worked on, and it's something that I feel anyone can work on and get to.
Wow. Amen. Well, it's so encouraging. Like we've all, I mean, maybe people go to door less than they did when I was a kid, but we've all like, there's a bunch of stages, right? Like you can do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
One step at a time. Like, you can hide behind the couch, pretend you're not home for a
Yes.
while. We've done that. You could take a step to it, change your mind. You could unlock it, but not open it yet. And ultimately you could open it talk across the threshold, and then maybe eventually you'll invite him in.
Yeah.
And so you can, like, I think what you've done is you've modeled that you've taken it one step at a time, and that allowed you to want to let God in.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
he's so glad.
Absolutely.
And I know you're
yes,
so glad.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Spencer, for
Yeah,
sharing.
of
I do
course.
think that this will be so encouraging to so many. And so I just thank you all for joining us for Beyond Sunday. Maybe there's somebody in your life that you're thinking that you could share this with. Maybe they're anywhere on the spectrum, Christian, atheist, agnostic, exploring. Maybe don't force this video on them, but ask them if they're interested in it, but share it. And also, I hope that you'd be encouraged as well from Spencer's testimony and story as well. So thank you so much. Join us back here next week on Beyond Sunday.